Morning, good evening, good afternoon. I sometimes don't even know where to look in my phone because I'm not Insta-fabulous and I'm not a professional YouTuber and I'm not making money by doing this. But what I am doing is I'm sharing my story and I'm trying to make eye contact with you using my camera so that you know that there are faces like mine that are 57 years old that left a long-term relationship. I got together with my now husband in 1999, and I filed for divorce in 2019. It took me from 2019 until 2021 to be divorced by law. And in that time, we had the lockdown from COVID, and it actually really worked for me. Because when court went to Zoom court, I could wear a mask. I was in my own house. I was protected to some extent, but court was still being used as a place to highlight me as a child manipulator, as a liar, as a drunk, as somebody who's profoundly mentally ill, to the point of being called bipolar in court, actually at the beginning of court in 2019. By the lawyer for what they call the other side, and also being labeled things that actually you're not really supposed to even say in court. So I want you to know that some of the reason why I've jumped ahead into this thing where time is fluid and different, and I go from before I filed until after I filed and when I was divorced, is because I want you to know what you're facing. I want you to know that it might take some time. But if you can play the long game, the more information you have when you leave your own home, with your children, with your pets, and with paper like your taxes, paper like birth certificates, marriage certificates, if he has been divorced or you've been divorced, the proof that you're divorced or what the dates are of the dissolution of that other marriage, because it matters when you're doing paperwork for the court and you have to be able to list these things. So for example, if your partner who you're leaving was married before and you can't even count on them remembering when they got divorced and you can't talk to them about it, but you need to be able to provide that as something to the court or in court documents or your lawyer. Make sure that you know when their divorce occurred and try to have a record of it. And if you live in a different state, it's hard to get. So just know that these things matter. So the more paper you leave with, as in paper, the easier it is to put in a photocopier and share. And some of the paper you don't want to send back and forth unencrypted. And some lawyers are so old school that they almost use a stone palette and chisel, and that they don't actually have Dropbox, but they might be a really good litigator. My lawyer had, when I hired him, I had 44 years in, and when I finished paying him after we got me divorced, he had 47 years in, and he could quote case law. That was the second lawyer I hired. The first one I had to fire because she was extraordinarily weak. And what I came to realize is in a 3-lawyer town where one's a really good mediator and you realize you can't work with her even though she's really nice and people like her and they recommended her, that when you hire the other one, your partner may hire the other one. But what you may not realize is that those 2 lawyers have been going up against each other in court for a long time. They might even be friends and they might not know it. And that rules and regulations, both for your partner, who you've now turned into a defendant, and for the lawyers, what's done in the dark is done in the dark, right? So just know that if you're in a 1-horse town or a 3-lawyer town, you need to go to a bigger town to get your litigator. And they're not going to be the kind of person that you can have a conversation with about how much you love the sky and talk about the nuances of the clouds. you are going to hire the litigator to litigate. And if you want to talk to somebody about clouds, talk to me. You can email me through my website or through the YouTube and tell me how you love clouds, and I'll get back to you on that. But know this, when you're going into this, you will underestimate, even if you have bought the books on high conflict divorce, on divorcing a narcissist, on co-parenting with a narcissist, at every turn you'll underestimate them, because when you turn them from your loving husband into a defendant, or your loving wife, or your loving whoever they are in your life, what you may not anticipate is that their public image matters more than you do. So I want you to know what you're up against. So a tip, trick, tool, and tactic I have for you is that you stay in your integrity, and even when all bets are off, this is the song I want you to apply to your life. Never Surrender by Corey Hart. I'm kicking it old school again, pulling this off my desk. I have a very messy desk. It will always be very messy, but I have a lot of paper. I write a lot of notes. Paper, it's a real thing, so it helps you know what's real. Lyrics to Never Surrender, Corey Hart, 1985, Boy in the Box. Here's the third paragraph, stanza, whatever you want to call it. So if you're lost and all alone, you can never surrender. And if your path won't lead you home, you can never surrender. And one of the things I talked about in my post, or in my work that I put up there yesterday, was that sometimes you're a lobster in a pot, and you get put in the pot, and you're in cold water, and you've come from the store, and you've been in a tank, and you're hanging out with your little lobster friends, and you get the things on your claws so you can't do lobstery things. And then you get put in this other place, and then you get put in a pot. Well, you didn't actually understand everything that was going on, because you're just a lobster being a lobster. So I want you to take a lot of the self-blame that you might be putting on yourself for being in this pot, and I want you to listen to Corey Hart, and I want you to never surrender. And if your path won't lead you home, your path could lead you to a rental home or an apartment. You might not have furnishings. You might not have access to your clothing. The person that you filed on might not vacate the marital home, for example, because it is about who controls the cheese. You are the cheese, and the stuff in your house is the cheese, which is why you're getting the kids out and you're getting the pets out. And you will have taken at least 2 outfits for court, which I covered already in another posting. And then you're also going to have the knowledge that they're going to pretend like they care. So when it becomes evident that you're saying, I don't even have any mattresses, they're going to say, she never told me she didn't have any mattresses. Well, they know you've moved into a rental house. They know that you've locked up the funds because you're the one that filed the restraining order on joint funds. They don't know that you had a credit card in your own name that you never used for 20 years, but you just happen to have. They don't know how much credit you're using to pay your lawyer with, and they don't know how much you're having to buy. But they do know that when they're not giving you stuff and not allowing you access to the home, they know that they're going to say, she never told me she didn't have any mattresses. She never told me she needed this. Well, what you did was you requested access to things, but maybe what they said was you had to come on a Wednesday, and that was a work day at the company that you owned as the sole on the LLC, and you were expected to be at work on a Wednesday, but they say you can't come on the weekend, and you can't come in the off hours, and you have to come when they have a witness present so that they can walk through the house that you co-own to make sure you don't take things. So just know that if you have had to leave and that you don't have even a place to stay, but you're staying with a friend, you have some dogs and cats, and you've boarded them, that when it's in court and when you have nothing and they're not allowing you access to your own home, but then they're saying they will, but only on a Wednesday when they know you have to be at work. What you are going to do is you're going to make sure you have access to stuff. And yesterday I held up this sign, realize how good you really are. Well, I didn't show you the back, and on the back is the price tag. I don't know if you can see this, but it says $2.99. Well, I got this for $2.99 at the Salvation Army. And if you think about the words Salvation and Army, you're going to become that for yourself, for your children and your pets, and for the place that you're probably going to have to rent because you may not be able to go home. So this is where Corey Hart comes into play. Lyrics to Never Surrender, 1985. So if you're lost and on your own, you can never surrender. And if your path won't lead you home, you can never surrender. And if you don't have access to mattresses, charge up 2 air mattresses, not 1. Your kids need their own, each one of them. And you need one, and you need to not be sleeping with your kids, especially if it's a boy and you're a woman, because that can and will be used against you. Especially if the boy is like 12 and you're like 57 or 53 or 50 or 45. Even though your kid loves you and you previously snuggled, you can't have your kids sleep in the bed with you in the rental house, even though they're totally scared and they have no actual furniture. And the person that's controlling the cheese in the marital home is not allowing you access and saying, well, I told her she could come and I've made myself available. But of course you can't come because you have to work. See where I'm going with this? So just remember, your path might not lead you home, so you have to anticipate this. And I said I wasn't gonna Monday morning quarterback my own life for you, but I'm gonna Monday morning quarterback something that I want you to think about. I want you to think about Woody Allen and Mia Farrow. And you can go back and you can look on the interwebs and you can see a lot of stuff. And then I want you to Wikipedia Ronan Farrow, who is a journalist, a writer, a Rhodes Scholar, a lawyer, and he graduated college when he was 15. He is the daughter of Mia and Woody, the son, Mia and Woody. They have a couple of daughters. Mia was married to Andre Previn before she was married to Woody. And curiously, Woody, when their younger child was 7, this was after they were divorced, was accused by Mia of sexual predation on their own child. And Ronan, who was the older brother, believed his sister, and a lot of people believed her, but she was only 7, so she had a really hard time expressing what was going on. And Woody, because Woody's Woody Allen, playwright, writer, movie maker, blockbuster, global star, beloved, neurotic guy that he is, movie star in his own movies. The guy is the full package. He is the full package, and he's the full package with multiple personas that he uses to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, including being a sexual predator against his own child. And then marrying his stepdaughter after he can't do what he was doing with a 7-year-old anymore. He then started to date his adopted stepdaughter, whose name is Sun Yi. So when you read about Ronan Farrow on Wikipedia, I want you to read Ronan's entire bio on Wikipedia from the very top, every little little diagram and box in there. And I want you to look at the relatives. And one of the relatives is Soon Yi. And she's the teenage adoptive daughter that Woody married after he couldn't perpetrate crimes on a 7-year-old that was also his adopted daughter. And Soon Yi is listed in the Wikipedia for Ronan, who is unbelievably talented, smart, and prolific beyond words in both writing ability, expository journalism, and being a champion for victims' rights in Darfur, people who have been maligned and abused and in war-torn countries, as well as people in his very own family who were maligned and abused in a war-torn country in their very own house, called the POW camp. So Soon Yi, his sister, is also listed as his stepmother in this Wikipedia. And then factor in that she was like 16 when she was getting with her dad. And then factor in that Woody Allen, well, let's just say he's pretty famous, right? And even though Mia was pretty famous, she wasn't famous enough. And even though she's a Goodwill ambassador for UNICEF, she had a real hard time with his spin machine. So I want you to go all the way through to the last page of the Wikipedia, and at the 106th reference Ronan uses, you may now understand the spin aspect and the voice aspect and being a voice for the voiceless. And then I would like you to go back to Corey Hart, Kick It Old School, 1985. You can YouTube Corey Hart, Never Surrender. And when you YouTube it, you can go to the comments and you can read what people have written. And there's 8,445 comments as of today. And the comment that I see that pops up first from 9 months ago says this: 1986, I was beaten really bad by my stepfather. I packed a gym bag, and with 98 cents in my pocket, I ran away from home at the age of 16 and hitchhiked from Michigan to California to start a new life. I can still remember thumbing on the highway while singing this song to myself. This song got me through some really hard times when I was a kid. This is written by somebody who has literally gone on YouTube with a YouTube handle, who has written this comment. So this is why I'm saying use YouTube and Netflix to get hip to things, because using music, using other people's stories, and framing your reality via things that are easy to access can help you understand what reality really is. And one of my realities was that I didn't know what reality was, because some of it was being controlled, because I was being controlled by my own mind and by outer things like this. And the person that I had really given up a lot of control to was my loving husband. And it started out small. It was like, we should get you a haircut. What did you do all day? What's in this? Did you braise this before you cooked it? But it went from that to, what makes you think you're such a good mother? In fact, you're not such a good mother. And because you're not such a good mother, why don't you try becoming a single mother? There's the door. But that was actually screamed at me while I'm holding a 12-month-old baby who we had adopted at age 11 months. And what I did not know at the time was that that was portending things, and that because I wanted so badly to be a mom and we had this little baby, that I didn't know that by actually staying, and when he said, there's the door, why don't you try being a single mom? I did try it, but I only tried it by driving to the Safeway in Montclair Village and parking up on top of the parking structure. This is California, so they make use of their They're parking lots, and they build parking lots on top of supermarkets in Cali because space is a thing, right? So I would sit in my car with the baby and I'd think, what do? I want to go check into a hotel, but I still have to go back, and I'm here by myself, and I don't have any family here, and he's the sole breadwinner. And I would go back and I would be a peacemaker and I would apologize. And I had nothing to apologize for, I assure you, but I did it. And why did I do it? Because I wanted to make it nice. So just know you are good and you are great, and many of the things you've gone up against aren't good and great. But just like the Wizard of Oz, it's all about perception, right? Perception is reality. So the spin machine used against Mia Farrow when she leveled charges at Woody Allen to try to protect her 7-year-old child. The spin machine that Woody had was bigger than the spin machine Mia had. And that child did have to go back and forth, and there was joint custody. And Woody was so good at his spin machine and spinning that he was able to get the 16-year-old daughter, Sun Yi Previn, who had a lot of access to other people in her life, to fall in love with him as he fell in love with her, even though she was a teenager. And then Woody was able to marry her, and now she's Ronan Farrow's stepmother, even though she's his sister. So please go back and Wikipedia Ronan Farrow and look up the books that he has written, and consider looking at some of the journalism that Ronan has done, both in the 106 references in the Wikipedia, as well as buying some of what he has written. And you can just go on Amazon or Target.com, and even if you just read the title and the description or some of the quotes, you'll realize that Ronan is a voice for the voiceless, and that throughout every single thing that's gone on, the underlying theme in his journalism has been highlighting corruption, abuse, spin, war, sexual violence, domestic violence, and how people with the bigger regime control the cheese. So just factor that in, okay? And then I want to show you something. I'm not going to show you my kid, but I'm going to show you my pets. And one of these pets is still with us. This is Lucky the cat when he was a little baby kitty, and this is Vida Loca. First Dober dog. Vida Loca also had other names that she answered to. And this cat, Lucky, well, his full name was Lucky Manuelo, which was a pretty weird movie, but it was an interesting movie. So I named the kitty Lucky. Vida Loca. Well, just whatever. I'm subversive. Lucky's still alive. He's 18. I did get him out on the day I drove away. I boarded him and his brother Kitty. This is baby Mitty. He was the little Bernard Goetz kitty that lived under the bed and jumped away from my now husband every time my now husband came near, wouldn't be near him. And then this is Darby the Doberman. And they're sleeping on a comforter that I bought for $7 at the Salvation Army. And they're in front of some stuff that I have, which are rocks like amethyst, selenite, a rock called a Shiva Lingam. And what else do I have here? Oh, aragonite. And one of the things that I had in my arsenal was that I always found community in creatures. And I found so much community and I had so much love that my Doberman, my little vicious Doberman, not one but two, would lay down with kitties. So, as I like to say, damn sure Skippy, I was not leaving them behind when I had to leave and execute on my op. And so what I did was I made sure that I had a place to have them, so that eventually, even though my path did not lead me home, it led me to a rental home where I made damn sure Skippy I could have the pets, and that the landlord would accept my pets, and that, in fact, not one Doberman, but two was able to lay down with kitties. So this terrible mom, who was called a terrible mom and asked what made me think that I was such a good mom by my loving now husband, who wasn't loving, but he is now a husband. He was only sometimes loving, and it was usually in public, or it was conditional. And then that love was used both as a tool and a weapon to undermine me and the child at every turn. And I didn't know how deep and dark and nasty it was. And still sometimes I question what's real and what's not. But what I do know, as I said in my video from yesterday, was that I did witness what occurred with what's called a 4-pound handheld sledgehammer. I was present, and even though the way it was put out there by his side, like the Woody Allen side, I actually had the Mia Farrow side, and I know that Mia's not making stuff up, and she had nothing to gain by it, nor did her 7-year-old have the ability to give voice to some of the stuff the way the court wants to hear it or can follow up on it, because little ones have funny words and you might know their words, but even the CPS and the DCF and these places tasked with investigating, they can be out Kim Jonged by the Kim Jong that's in your kitchen, the one that does have the handheld sledge. And just because he wasn't able to make contact with it, he says that that's the first time he's ever done anything like this, and he doesn't know why he did it, and he feels terrible. Well, what he's not telling the CPS or the DCF is that not only did he not apologize, but he only apologized 10 months later when his dad was in the house, and I finally had access to the house, and his dad was there, and I felt comfortable about coming into the house because I knew he wouldn't do anything with his dad there, because his dad's old and his dad reads the Bible, for example. Well, on one of the days I was coming over 10 months later to get some stuff, 10 months later, and yes, I was smart enough to have $7 comforters from the Salvation Army. Oh, hey, Dibs. And I was smart enough to have signs like this and keep the price tag that said $2.99 in the back to remind me that it was $2.99. One of the days I was coming over to get stuff 10 months later when his dad was in the house, my son, who I'm supposed to call our son by court order, came out and said, Mom, guess what? I'm like, what? As I'm loading up my car. Mom, Dad said he was sorry. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, Dad said he was sorry. I'm like, oh. I said, oh, he did? And he said, yeah. And he also said, Mom stretches the truth. And he like made the face that the Kim Jong that is now husband would have used. And I could see by the way my son, our child, was saying this, that the subtle facial cues were still being used, only like some other women, my child was having to navigate this now on his own because we had joint custody. Yes, Doobs, I know. Doobs always comes over when she hears me say things or do things in a certain way because she's super attuned to me. And one of the things you have going for you in some of the things you've been through is you have incredible survival skills. You have the ability to use information for yourself, finally, if you decide to. And then you're gonna have somebody like me who's telling you what not to underestimate. And I'm gonna say, don't ever underestimate the other side and their spin machine. And look at Mia Farrow's story. Look at Angie and Brad, Brangelina, and look at the fact that they were on a private jet and that her oldest boy stood up in conflict, and that shit got real, and it got real against a teenage boy who was defending his mother, who was seated nearby, who had also gone into the bathroom on the plane, and that Brad had done this to her super violently. The kids didn't see that, but they knew what was going on. And then when Brad tried to get everybody to shut up, Brad overstepped his bounds, and that teenage boy stood up to defend his mother, and Brad went after that boy. And the fallout is real. And there is a media spin on it, but also know that Angelina has gone on to testify about how CPS and their methodologies and their assessment processes need to be reorganized and upgraded to the point where they can actually determine outcomes and cases in ways that represent actual reality instead of manufactured reality. And whether you like Angie or not, and whether you think that Brad is still the hottest hunk ever, even though he's got a gray beard and now he's sober, what I would like to say is that the spin machine is real. You will encounter it in your small town or your big city. And the moment you file on the Kim Jong in the kitchen, and they go from the loving husband to being a defendant, their spin machine is underway. And I never want you to underestimate those capabilities. So if you have a cell phone and you have administrative privileges on it for your whole family, don't get rid of it, because you can actually see on the month who they're calling, and you're gonna print it out and you're gonna look at the numbers, and you're gonna see from the moment that you file on that person that they are making calls, and they're calling your friends, they're calling your first marriage and family therapist, the one that was weak and that you wanted to fire because she couldn't remember the details that you were telling her, or that he was lying to and getting onto his side. And she never told you or him that you should also have your own counselor who you can put things with to help you frame them so that you can be better equipped to come back to marriage and family therapy. Well, she actually wasn't that great. And yeah, you did want her fired. In fact, you asked him to get rid of her and he didn't do it, but you finally did it, or you forced him to somehow. Well, he's gonna go back to her after you file on him. So you're gonna be able to see that if you have administrative privileges on your phone. And you're gonna realize, oh my God, I sat in therapy and took accountability and owned things, while he sat there and lied. And I actually sat in therapy and I didn't have an outburst because I wanted to hear what he would say. But just know that what he said that she believed. And you're taking accountability for things. And also you're saying, don't you remember that I told you that my father died and I slept on the floor for 2 weeks as he died, and it was devastating? When you have called her on what she doesn't remember, she's gonna remember that you were a little hard to manage in therapy and that you seemed kind of aggro. So just know that the spin machine is real, but it doesn't matter, because your path will lead you to a new home. And like Corey Hart, and like this Emmanuel person that in print said he left home with a duffel bag and 98 cents at 16, that there are things that are gonna get you through. You're gonna have the Salvation Army. You're gonna have your very small team. You're gonna have gotten the pets out, and you're gonna have photographic reminders both in your memory and in your life of the fact that your Doberman and your kitties lay down together. And even though sometimes the cat is really mean to the dog, that they do get along, and the lion can lay down with the lamb. You might be part hedgehog and part pug like me, but you're also a mother, and you are one tough mother, or you're a father and you're one tough father. And your fur babies are your babies, and your baby might be 12, might be 16, might be 7. And their words may be completely misconstrued, especially when they're interviewed by places like the DCF or CPS. And if the CPS comes into your home and you're trying to edit yourself because you know your child is in the other room, you're trying not to break down, or if you break down and you wipe a tiny tear out of your eye, that CPS reporter might say, well, she pretended to be crying and she appeared to wipe away a tear, but I didn't see any tears. And you might read that in the report, and you might know that you were controlling yourself because your child was in the other room and you didn't want to break down in your child and your child's new rental house when they had just started school, and you had access to nothing from your old house because you were being denied access. So you had to go to the Goodwill and the Salvation Army to buy clothes. You had to borrow pants and sheets from your sisters or your friends. You had to charge things like mattresses, so you could only afford one set, and then you traded off who got to sleep on the air mattress and who got to sleep on the mattress. Your kid was asleep in the room you were sleeping in, but you knew they couldn't sleep in the same bed with you because you might go up on charges for that. So you make sure that your air mattress and their mattress, the mattress, the one set you can buy, are far apart, but you might move them into the same room because your kid is scared. Just know that you are a great mother. You are a great person. You are a good person, and your goodness and your light will propel you on. And I'm going to keep giving you tips, tricks, tools, tactics, and training. And know that I'm telling you some of this court stuff now because I want you to have it in your back of your mind as you prepare and you're still in your house, so that you never underestimate what's going to go on and you don't stay stuck on, why is he doing this? And you can't do that. You have to run it like an op. And here's the reason why. Because you do have to be strong for the kid. The kid's not going to know what's going on. You want to make sure you have the pets out, but if you don't have the ability to get them out of boarding right away, you have to make sure that you're as stable as possible when you have everybody, so that the pets aren't totally traumatized when they come into the home because they're vibing off of you. So you have to be a really strong team leader. And here's one other tip that helped me a lot. This is, you know, some elf magic. This is ammonite. This is petrified wood. Oh, that's Darby. Here, look at Darby. Darby, that's my second in command. Ammonite and petrified wood can go in your purse to court, or they can go right in your bra. This. And when you get scanned, they're not going to be feeling your boobies, but you could actually have ammonite and petrified wood, which are like from 350 billion, million, trillion years ago. And you have the power of the universe in that. It doesn't show up on a scan. And you can literally have a totem right on your boobie next to your heart. And when you go through the scanner, if you want something bigger, they're not going to take away your orange calcite in the shape of a heart or your red jasper. These are not weapons. Oh, but they are. So I have a lot to say. Please come back, like, share, and subscribe if you can. And just know that by your gathering data before you leave, if it's safe to do so, when you get to court and you encounter that spin machine that starts 1 minute after the divorce papers are in their hands and they've been served while you're far away and safe and the pets are out of the house, that these and this are very big weapons. And yes, you are your own Salvation Army, but you can also shop there. So, what am I gonna say? Love yourself, baby. And you hear Darby, she's prancing right next to me. So if your team is small, make your dog your second in command, okay? And they're gonna throw themselves across you and they're gonna love you because you deserve to be loved. And they know who you are. They just can't go to court to testify on your behalf. So get them out, all right? Thank you. Bye.